What is the opportunity cost of going to university, of going to business school? A lot of the reason that people give networking a bad name, and my rule is, if you don't bring any money to the table, you don't get to talk to me about my money. We all know that having less reliance on any one particular thing is the right way to go. Do you have a history of bouncing checks, of missing credit card payments? It's how you perform when you do have the money. I would have had so much more money, so much younger. It's your knowledge, it's your skills that are going to make you money. It's not that you need to own a house or own a car, you actually just need to use it. Then what is the most cost-effective way of doing that? If you found a business that you like and that you know something about, the best way to make money is to stick with that business. Those status symbols are very, very good door openers. Something cold, something early, and something that probably hurts your body. And they attribute their success in life to those 1, 2, or 3 things. And I think that's a load of bollocks. If you see my arse on LinkedIn, you're going to remember it, because there aren't many arses on LinkedIn. Should you go to business school? Now, I often get asked questions like, should I go to business school? Should I go to university? You know, what is the right path for me to get the career I want, to get the life I want, to get the income I want? There's no right answer for any individual situation. I think, the world's a very different place now. If you go back, 20 years ago when it was time for me to go to university or for me to go to business school, that was very much a kind of a time in life when if you didn't go to university, if you didn't have some pretty heavy duty senior qualifications, then it would be almost impossible to be taken seriously, almost impossible to get a job in any kind of mainstream corporate type company. Obviously that doesn't matter if you're setting up in business for yourself, but often even people who set up eventually in business for themselves, they have a career path that involves working in corporations, working for other people, working their way up the ladder while they get the knowledge, the skill sets, the contacts they need, and then break off and go and do it themselves. But whatever it is you want to do, you need to ask yourself, what is the right route and what is the quickest route for you? Because what you really need to consider is A, what is the opportunity cost of going to university, of going to business school, and B, can I get those skills, can I get the traits that I need in some other cheaper, quicker way? Now, the cost of going to university in today's world is probably something like $100+ exercise. And by the time you look at 3 or 4 years of education, the course, the accommodation, the living expenses, etc. whilst you're there. So what you need to be asking yourself is, can you achieve what you want to achieve in a shorter time scale for less money? Because having that qualification of saying, I've been to university, I've been to business school, will not help you walk through many more doors than you would be able to walk through if you'd learned the skills in a different way. Taking it to its extreme, in today's world, the amount of information that is freely available out there, I would actually argue that every piece of information you could ever possibly need for pretty much any subject is already out there for free. Whether you're taking it from online courses, from YouTube, from Instagram, from mentors, from whatever it may be, you can find all that information for nothing. What you're really paying for when you pay for a course or you pay for a university is really structure, accountability, and a badge at the end of it. I never went to university, I never went to business school. That's a slight liar. I went to university for 6 weeks and realised that whilst I was trying to work at the same time, I wouldn't be able to hold down a course and hold down a job. So I left because I felt that I was going to be able to learn more and get more real world experience working in a business. So these are the things that you guys need to consider. I was obsessed with business from probably 10, 11, 12 years old. I had a dad who was a businessman, so I used to listen to and absorb information from him all the time. I used to pick his brains. I used to read every business book, every business periodical I could get my hands on. Whilst these may not be thought of as formal pieces of education, these are all methods of getting the skill sets that you need to learn. So for me, if you want to be getting set up in business, then I would actually say it's far more important to be learning the skills like sales, like marketing, like networking, like accountancy, human resources and people skills. Getting a good grounding in all of these in a real world environment rather than sticking your head in coursework and books for 3 or 4 years, because the reality is once you come out of business school, you're still not ready for business in the real world. For me, you would still be almost starting at day one, cutting your teeth with the problems. Now, I really find that the things that I've learned in business have come from that on-the-job training of doing, of failing, of tweaking, of doing again. And they're the things that you can never learn in business school. Obviously, what people could learn in business school will be the things that I would have learned from books, I would have learned from videos, I would have learned from listening to other people. But that's how I got my knowledge and then putting that into action is a whole new world. I guess, an analogy for me would be with boxing, for example. You can do fitness all day. You can do weeks and weeks of pads and exercises like that. But until you actually get in a ring in a sparring situation, until somebody punches you in the face or punches you in the stomach, it doesn't matter how many pads you've done, it doesn't matter how much fitness training you've done, there's nothing like being in that situation. So for me, if you really want to accelerate your kind of business knowledge, your career in business, you need to get out there and be doing things as soon as humanly possible. So if you are at university and you do decide to go down the route of going to a business school, can you be doing an apprenticeship? Can you be doing a part-time job? Can you be working alongside people at the same time? Because the real learnings you're going to get are going to be from being in those real world business situations. But like most things that I've talked to you guys about, the right answer for me is not the right answer for you, is not the right answer for somebody else. There is almost no right answer. It's what is the right answer for you and for your situation. But I just think it's very important now to consider all the other options out there. And for anyone listening to this who is not particularly interested to have a career in business, but knows the rough direction they want to go in, but doesn't know if they should be going to university or not, most of what I've just talked about in here applies to you as well. There's so many different routes to get to your end destination now. University, college, online learning, apprenticeships, learning by doing and making mistakes. So there's no one right answer, and what you need to do is find the quickest, cheapest, most effective route for yourself. How do I improve at networking? Great question, and I love questions that are anything to do with networking because it's one of my favourite topics. It's one of the things that I spend most of my time in business doing, and as anyone who follows me regularly will know, it's something that I attribute for most of my business successes really, and not just my business successes, but most of my opportunities in life actually come down to the people in my network. One of the best ways to improve at doing something is to actually just be doing it, to be doing it more regularly, build that confidence muscle, because I think confidence is a very important thing in networking. People don't like doing it because they haven't done enough of it. They've never had the right successes from it in the past, so they just don't feel comfortable going out and meeting other people. But there's quite a few things you need to understand, quite a few things that you need to get right. First of all, when it comes to networking in a business situation, you must remember that most of the people out there are in the same position as you. They're wanting to grow their network. They're probably not huge fans of networking. They're probably scared about these, ice-breaking introductory conversations. So you're all as nervous as each other and you're all in the same boat. So use that, I guess, as a bit of a de-nerve, is that even a word? So something to de-damage your nerves and realize that other people will probably suffering the same fears as you. Now, top tips for how to get better value from networking. First of all, you need to be networking in the right situations with the right people. I always say that I really, really do hone in on the targets that I want to network with. It's not just a random process of chucking out business cards and hoping for the best. The best targets that I've networked with and had the best results from are ones that I've really identified early on and said, look, I need to meet that person. It may have been a specific person or it may have been a person in a specific environment. It would typically be, I want to get funding from that business, or I want to do business with this company, therefore I need to have a relationship with their chief executive or their chairman or one of their major shareholders or whoever it may be. So I specifically find and identify those people so I know who I'm out there looking for. A lot of the reason that people, I guess, give networking a bad name is because people are trying to probably network with the wrong people, trying to force a product on them that they don't want, or being on the receiving end of a product that they don't want. And the whole point of success in networking is mutually beneficial relationships, not forcing products and services and situations on people that they don't want to be forced into. So have a careful think before you start about who you want to meet and set out ways to then go and meet them. Second way I like to network is by just being associated or surrounded by the right caliber of people that I may not specifically know why I'm going to be doing anything with that person. I might not have a specific business need or task or circumstance in hand at that point, but I will know that at some point in the future, that person is probably going to add value to my network, is going to enrich my life in some way, shape or form. So that could just be people from a certain sector. It could be, high net worth individuals, because obviously in my specific line of business, I spend a lot of time raising investment money, working with investors. So obviously it always makes makes sense for me to be surrounded by those kind of people. But you can take this analogy into anything that you want to do. I mean, whether, I don't know if you're an accountant looking for other business owners, if you are, let's take it something completely non-businessy, if you want to have a career in football, being surrounded by people from football teams or in sporting arenas, etc., are going to ultimately, hopefully, put you one step closer to where you want to be. So you should always be networking with a purpose, always networking with an end goal in place. Because if you're just randomly talking to people, randomly chucking business cards out here and there, you're going to not get the results you want, and you're going to feel demoralized, and the people that you talk to are probably going to get irritated by having you around. And the third tip I would give on networking, especially on building the relationships with the people that you want to build, is you've got to be adding value. And I always say you've got to be giving a lot more before you ever think about receiving anything. And again, that's another big problem with, I guess, networking, relationship building in general, that people just always find that, you know, somebody appears and tries to sap something from them, whether it's knowledge or money or skill set or whatever it is. I always find that I've built the best relationships with the people who've delivered me the most long-term value by looking at how I can help them and what, you know, I can do to make their life better long before I think about what I can take from them. Now, obviously, it's going to differ in certain situations. I mean, if, for example, I am looking to deal with a lender and I'm looking to borrow and they're looking to lend, obviously there's something probably quite immediate and transactional that we can both talk about. But I'm just talking about building my network with great people that I want to surround myself with, then I need to bring something to the table. I need to have something of value to offer. And whether that's helping people out by making them introductions to other people in my network, whether it's putting on great events to take them to, whether it's finding a way to solve a problem that they've got, you know, whatever it is, I'm always thinking of ways to help them to make their life better long before I'm asking to take something from them. So 3 or 4 top tips for you there. You need to apply all of them, but ultimately, if you want to get better at networking, you need to be doing more and more of it. It's an absolutely essential skill for success in business, but I would really say it's an essential skill for success in life and whatever areas you want to work in, whether you are looking to be a business owner, a photographer, a football player, a musician, whatever it is you want to do, you need connections and you need a great network to be able to get the results that you want to get. So the quicker that you can start to build your confidence and start to learn your skills in networking, the quicker you're going to get the successes that you want. So, does having a husband, wife, boyfriend or girlfriend affect your productivity in business? Very interesting question. I think it's a good question because it's probably the kind of question that most people are afraid to ask, and I'm sure most people are afraid to give an honest answer on. I don't think this just applies to business. For me, this is a fundamental question for success in life and for happiness in life in any area that you decide to explore. I guess the question was, does having a partner hamper your productivity? I'll answer it in a different way and say, I honestly believe having the right partner is absolutely fundamental to your maximum potential in any particular area. Before we get deep into it, I mean, you just think, how can you be at your best? How can you perform at your best? Whether it's as a business person, whether it's as a sportsman, an artist, anything. How can you do that when you've got a nagging wife or some annoying, jealous boyfriend or whatever it may be, blowing up your phone all day, hacking you, hampering what you're trying to get on with? So yeah, I think it's absolutely fundamental to have a great relationship. Listen, by great relationship, we've got to be realistic. I'm not saying we don't have problems. We all have problems in our relationships. She goes, just look at it, you're just so fucking fat. But I think if things aren't perfect 90% plus of the time, then you're going to find that all of the other areas in your life suffer dramatically. So my honest advice would be, if you can't have a great partner and a great relationship, then I really think you should have no relationship and you should be single. Because if you've got great aspirations in business, in sports, in life, and whatever it may be, you aren't going to get there by having someone pulling you back, holding you back. And this isn't aimed specifically at girls or specifically at boys. You know, we all know that in life with our partners, there's a multitude of issues that can be there. If your interests aren't aligned, if there's trust issues, whatever it may be that causes annoyances and problems, that we're all going to have a bad day in our relationship, but you need someone who is fully aligned with your goals, with your interests, with your passions, etc. Otherwise, neither of you are going to be happy and you're not going to get where you want to be. I think when it comes to business specifically as well, I also see a lot of problems where business owners have a partner, whether it's a husband, whether it's a wife, who've not been a part of that business in any way, but they get the ability to cause problems for them. This particularly comes down to, let's say, signing financial documents, signing guarantees, etc. I mean, many times have I seen struggling business owners who need to put some money back into the business have the opportunity to get a loan, but to get that loan, they need to be able to, for example, put up the family house as security. And I have seen more times than not, the wife or the husband who isn't the business owner actually refuse to allow that person to sign the loan and to use the house as security, which then ultimately means that the business fails, the business falls down. I've always had a very simple rule with my, let's say, girlfriends, partners, etc. that I've been with, even with my wife when I was married to Harley's mom. And my rule is, if you don't bring any money to the table, then you don't get to talk to me about my money. I'm not saying that in a chauvinistic way, in a selfish way, or in a way of looking down on someone who's got less money than me, because ultimately we're together in a relationship. We are partners in that way. But ultimately, my businesses and my money have come from my risk taking, from my ideas, from my logics, etc., etc. And I always say to the partners that I'm with, look, you're joining me in my relationship. You get to enjoy the fruits of my labours. You get to enjoy and benefit from the things that I've done. And I'm not going to let you stick your oar in and, I guess, fuck things up in a way that I wouldn't be happy with. So don't tell me how to run my business. Don't tell me what I can and can't do. Don't tell me how I can and can't spend my money. And certainly don't tell me not to make decisions that I know are right for the business just because they may not be perfect for our personal life right now. Now look, I know that doesn't apply to everybody. If you have a husband or a wife or a boyfriend or a girlfriend who've been with you since day one and you've both started with nothing and now got big money, or you've both been together from day one because he or she has supported you from day one and you're now 20 years down the line and maybe you're the husband doing all the work and she's the wife who's looked after the kids and made the house perfect and made your personal lives fantastic. So without her, you wouldn't have had your business. That's a very different scenario, I think. I've grown my businesses on my own over the years, and there's been no single woman who's been with me from day one and suffered all of the bad stuff that I've had to suffer. Therefore, my view is quite simple. If you join me, I make the decisions. If that means I fuck up at times and that has an impact on us not having some money or not having enough money, well, that's tough shit. If you're only here for the money, I'm not really fucking interested in you anyway. So you've got to take the rough and the smooth. But that's what works for me. But look, went off on a bit of a tangent there, but I think all of these kind of stories and answers get back to the same thing. That yes, having the right partner is absolutely essential for business success. And if you can't have the right partner, then make sure you have no partner. Be single-minded and go and achieve your goals. Should you have multiple income streams? Very good question, and probably a very topical question nowadays because, whenever you look on Instagram, whenever you look on YouTube, there's all your business gurus, all your financial advisors out there drumming on about the importance of multiple streams of income. But I don't think the answer to the question is just quite as simple as yes, you should, or no, you shouldn't. I mean, look, I think we all know that having less reliance on any one particular thing is the right way to go, whether that's reliance on one particular stream of income or one particular main client in a business or whatever it may be. When you've only got one of something, the risk of losing it and that potential detrimental effect on your business, on your lifestyle, on your life in general is obviously huge. I think, we've all seen this during the COVID times when people who had jobs lost them, and when business owners who had reliance on one particular customer or, one particular geographic area or whatever it may be, when those doors are closed, it's a big wake-up call to you. Influencers have seen it on social media when they have the focus of all their attentions on one particular platform. They may be very big on Instagram, but have not quite cracked it yet on TikTok and Twitter, etc. When Meta has a bad day, Facebook's down or Instagram's down, then it's a big problem. I mean, I noticed this yesterday on WhatsApp. I mean, how many of us now are glued to WhatsApp for our, personal communications and for a lot of business communications? I see a lot of businesses out there that actually pride themselves on being a WhatsApp first or a WhatsApp only business. And I was at home yesterday, thought there was a Wi-Fi problem, realised there wasn't. Actually WhatsApp had gone down for an hour and a half. So when these problems happen, it shows you how much you need to have multiple sources of anything. So I know the question was about multiple streams of income, but for me the answer is you need to have multiple sources of everything in reliance on many things. However, you also need to concentrate on getting each source, each stream correct. So for me, the big mistake is to be running off too early and getting multiple streams of something when none of those streams are solid, when your skill set's not right, or when you haven't got a solid base, a solid foundation. If you are investing in property, for example, and you have bought your first house, and people say, well, you now need to move into crypto, you now need to move into a pension, into, I don't know, renting out equipment, whatever it may be. That may be the right answer in the long term for some diversification. But I think in the short term, you need to make sure you've got a stable base and a great level of knowledge in each of the particular areas that you're going into. So if you've just moved into property and you've bought your first rental property, for example, then for me, now is not the time to be forgetting about the property and moving on to something else. You need to be concentrating on building a solid base in that area. I mean, using property as the example, I often see this where someone's bought a house, for example, they're from Leeds, and they've bought a rental property in Leeds, and then you ask them what they're doing next, and they say, oh, I'm buying a house in Spain and I'm going to rent it out, or I'm buying something in Portsmouth or Portugal or wherever it may be. And whenever I ask them why, the answer is always about diversification, but these people don't really consider the cost implications of diversifying so far apart so early on in the game. And when they only have, say, one property in Leeds, for me, they can be having 2, 3, 5, 10, probably 20 properties in Leeds before there's any real risk of a concentration issue. So yes, you need to be diversified. Yes, you need multiple streams of income. Yes, you need multiple sources of revenue, of audience, of whatever it may be. But before you move on to stream number 2, make sure you've properly bedded in source number 1. So like I say, I know the question was about income, but you can apply it to many areas. Yes, you've got to have multiple sources, but make sure you've got the right sources and make sure that they're all solid sources before you spread yourself too thin and end up with multiple sources of nothing. So, if you're new in business, raising finance is probably one of the most difficult activities you're going to have to undertake. Raising finance in general is never easy, or never normally easy, but raising finance for new start businesses is particularly difficult. Now, I mean, this is a minefield of an area that we could talk about, but the key things that you need to know are, when you're raising finance for a new start business, you've got 2 options. You have equity and you have debt. Equity is where you take money in return for selling some shares in the business. The person giving you the money gets a piece of the action. Debt is where you are lent the money and you then repay it along with interest. It's always easier normally to raise debt than it is to raise equity because people can see exactly where they stand. There's a lot less variables involved than in equity. People would argue that there's a much bigger upside with equity. Yes, there is, but it's much more of a complicated scenario to assess. Now, when you're raising debt for a new start business, because that business doesn't have any track record, the reality is the lenders are going to be relying on the credit and the reliability of the directors and the owners of the business. You're going to be asked to stand behind your loan and to give a personal guarantee. Therefore, it's absolutely essential that as an individual you have good credit, because your business doesn't have any credit at this point, and therefore it's going to be your credit that's looked upon. I mean, even when raising finance for more mature and established businesses, it's actually still very important as an owner or as a director of those businesses to have good credit, because even if you're not giving a guarantee, the chances are any lender is going to credit check you as an individual so that they can see how you behave, what your historical payment history is like. Even if you've got a more established business that's got a credit rating, that's got a financial history, the chances are that any lender is going to want to look at the credit reports of the business owners, of the business directors anyway, because even though you might not be standing behind the loan, even though you may not be guaranteeing it, you are ultimately the people who are going to be responsible for making those payments, and therefore they're going to want to know how you behave. Do you have a history of bouncing checks, of missing credit card payments, of not paying little bills? Because this isn't just about whether or not you've got the money, it's how you perform when you do have the money. And many people out there are very disorganized. They may have the ability to make payments, but they don't have the direct debit set up properly, they don't manage the cash flow properly. So they just cause an annoyance to lenders. So all these things are very important. So get your own personal credit file right, and then that way of operating, that professional attitude should translate into your business as well. But even if you're prepared and able as a business owner to stand behind your business loans to guarantee them as a new start business, the amount of financing opportunities for startup businesses out there aren't huge. And I think what's very important to do is to actually make sure that when you are setting up a business, you're running it as tight as humanly possible, and you're actually only spending the absolute minimum amount of money necessary. So often I see business plans where people are looking to raise or to borrow tens, if not hundreds of thousands of pounds. And when you actually look into what they want to use that money for, it's such completely unnecessary things. It's fancy offices on day one. It's hiring multiple members of staff when there aren't even any customers. It's to fund a marketing plan which has had no thought or logic behind it. It is ultimately going to end up being money down the drain. So one of the best ways to raise money is actually to make sure you don't need to raise it, or don't need to raise as much as you initially thought, because that's going to make your whole money raising job easier. A key method of raising money for startup businesses and new start businesses is quite often borrowing from friends and family, from stakeholders who've got some kind of vested interest in you. Now, I know a lot of people don't like to go down this route. They like to say, well, I want to stand on my own 2 feet, or I'm not going to go and ask the bank of mom and dad, or I'm not going to rely on my friends, or whatever it may be. My advice is, I think it's quite important to take your ego out of it, because raising money is very, very difficult for a business, for any business, particularly a startup business. And if you've got people offering to give you money, whether that's a wealthy brother or sister, a generous mom and dad, whatever it may be, I think you really need to think twice if you're considering not taking it, because it could be one of the only opportunities you get for a long while to raise that money. Now look, I can't talk about how that's going to damage your relationship if things go wrong. Only you know what that situation is going to be like there. But I think it's important not to have an ego about it, and not to say, oh, I'm going to do everything for myself, because raising money is very, very difficult. So 3 or 4 key things there. Make sure you're not trying to raise more money than you actually need. Make sure you've tried to tap up any sources who are easy for you to get money from in the first place, friends, family, parents, etc. And also make sure that your personal credit file is as good as can possibly be, because anyone lending that business money is going to want to know that you, the owner, can stand behind it. Aside from that, there's also the opportunity for many businesses to be able to raise grants, or potentially even money from business-related charities. That's all going to depend on what area you're in, what type of business you are, what your stage of life is, etc. If I lost it all, what would I do tomorrow to get rich again? Interesting question, and for me, quite an easy one to answer, because I've been in this position once before, and I've almost been in it 2 or 3 times before. If I lost everything and I had to start afresh from tomorrow, 2 things I would immediately be doing is hammering the life out of my network and hammering the life out of the skill set that I've got that I can monetize. Because for me, they're the only 2 ways that you really make money. You make money from the skills you've got, and you make money from the people that you know, the people you've got in your network. And that's why I'm always growing those skills for myself, growing that network for myself, and I'm always telling you guys how important it is to be building your network, and how you've got to be investing in yourself and growing your own skills, your own skill sets, your skill bases. Now, monetizable skills come in many, many shapes and forms. Ultimately, it's anything that you can do that you can charge a price for. They come in different shapes and sizes and with different values. Being able to cut gardens, for example, is a monetizable skill set. Obviously, it's not going to be as valuable as teaching someone how to be a concert grade pianist, and that's not going to be as valuable as having the skill set of being an SEO master and being able to help somebody's website rank to the top of Google. All of these different skills have got different values on them, but they're all absolutely essential. Moving on from skills to networks, I always say, it's the people in my network who've been directly responsible for 80-90% of my kind of key successes. If I lost everything tomorrow, I would be picking up the phone to the people that I know could help me do a deal, that could buy something from me, that could sell something to me, that could get me back in the game in some way, shape or form. I often talk about that as I get older, I have less and less fear about losing everything. I mean, not that I ever probably particularly feared it too much in the first place, but because I know that I've got these skills, because I know that I have this network, if I was ever pushed with my back against the wall, as much as I wouldn't like to have lost lost my money, I would still be pretty comfortable that I could pick up the phone tomorrow, that I could get back on the horse pretty quickly. I was actually talking to someone recently about, whether I would rather be the age I am now, with the skills I've got now, the knowledge I've got now, and the money I've got now, or if I would give up the money I've got now to rewind 10 or 15 or 20 years. And I didn't even have to think about the question. I would give up the money in a heartbeat to be 20 years younger, as long as I still had the same knowledge and the same skills that I've got now, because the compounding effect of those skills and knowledge over time are absolutely priceless. If I knew what I knew now 20 years ago, the mistakes I would have avoided, the quicker paths I would have taken, the route to making money, I would have had so much more money, so much younger, and with such a smoother journey. It's your knowledge and it's your skills that are going to make you money. What can you take away from this? The key takeaway from this is always be investing in yourself and doing as much as possible to make your skill sets as valuable as possible. Learn as much as you can, absorb as much as you can, learn as many different things in as many different areas as possible. Because if you were to wake up tomorrow with no money, or if you were to be transported to a foreign country, a desert island, and having to start from scratch, you will be able to wake up tomorrow and get to where you want to be a lot quicker than you actually think. And when you can do that, it takes the worry out of things. And that's a big inhibitor for many people, the fear, the fear of loss, the fear of failure. But if you know you can build it again very quickly and from nothing, then that failure disappears and you've got a whole new perspective on life. Should you buy a house? I guess by asking that question, you're asking if you should be buying a house for yourself to live in. Should you buy a house or should you rent a house? Great question, and I think a lot of interesting ideas and logic behind the answer. For me, it's quite simple. When you make any purchasing decision, purchasing against rental, you've got to ask yourself, what is the opportunity cost? What is the cost of buying something compared to what you would be able to do with that money if you didn't buy that thing? And that's the same for a house, for a car, for any asset, really. And I think really when it comes to buying these personal possessions, most people's buying decisions are never about financial logic and are more about emotion and ego. I think there's probably a very British thing, because I know in America, for example, people have been a lot more open to renting houses, particularly at higher levels, higher price values on houses than we have in the UK. And I think there's a real ego thing about the fact that people feel they must own their house or they must own a car. When really, I think you just need to look at these assets and say, it's not that you need to own a house or own a car, you actually just need to use it. As long as you get the use out of it, then what is the most cost-effective way of doing that? So when you come to make the decision about whether or not you should buy your house, you need to be asking yourself the question, what could you be doing with the money if you didn't buy the house? So when you buy that house, let's say, pick whatever number we want, it's a £500,000 house. That's probably going to need a minimum of £100,000 deposit. There's going to be stamp duty, there's going to be legal costs, there's going to probably be some furniture and other bits and pieces. Realistically, for that £500,000 house, you're probably going to have put £150,000 of capital into it. You're going to be borrowing £350,000. What is the cost of the mortgage compared to what is the cost of the rent? Is there a differential in those two figures? If one costs more than the other, then that's the opportunity cost. For the £150,000 that you've put down there as your deposit, okay, people may be saying to you, yeah, but the house is going up, so that £150,000 is an investment. But could you be investing it in a better way? Could you be buying a higher yielding buy-to-let property? Or is there a business that you could have invested it in that's going to make you more money? So there's no right answer to any of these questions. It very much depends on your personal circumstances and where you are financially and what you need to do with the money. The real important thing to do is not to get emotionally attached to these decisions. It's a very British thing. It's particularly a thing of 20, 30, 40, 50 years older. The generations before us, your parents, your grandparents, very much come from that view of you've got to get on the property ladder, you've got to buy a house. And that house buying decision tends to come ahead of any other financial decision, or rather financial logic that people would tend to make. And maybe buying that house for you right now isn't the right decision. If you haven't started the business yet that you want to start, if you haven't got any savings in your account, if you haven't got a pension, if you haven't got an ISA, if some of these things probably need considering before you put every last penny into buying a house. Talking about that emotional and ego factor of it, I can tell you from first-hand experience, I've actually rented more of the personal houses that I've lived in than I've actually owned those houses. For me, that's been a decision twofold. One, that I would rather have the capital available for the businesses I invest in. When I lend money, when I invest in businesses, I'm making annual returns on my money of 20, 30, 40, 50, potentially even higher. And I'm never ever going to be getting those kind of returns by buying and owning the house that I live in. So when capital is limited to me, then it doesn't make any sense for me to put that capital into a house. I want to be using it to aggressively invest in investment opportunities, in income producing opportunities. Also, I like to travel. I like to be flexible. I often wake up tomorrow and go, oh, you know what, I'm moving to Dubai, or I'm moving to Las Vegas, or I'm moving to Spain, or many of the places that I've lived in. If I owned a house in whichever country I was moving from, that's going to limit my ability then for where I'm going to next. Okay, people will say, yeah, but you can just sell that and buy a new house. Buying and selling property is a very expensive thing. Every time you buy and sell, legal fees, agents fees, the time it takes to sell the house, whether or not you get the right price at the time that you were expecting. If you own this asset and you're wedded to this asset, it might make you make decisions in other areas of your life that you didn't want to make. And maybe you will put off moving to another country when you really want to make that move. Maybe it will put you off starting a business when you really want to start that business just because you think now's not the right time, because you're wedded to these houses that don't make financial sense and are just purely there for kind of emotional and ego value. So that's my advice. Look at the opportunity cost, look at what you could be doing with the money if you weren't buying the house. But first and foremost, make sure that whatever buying decisions you make, whether it's for a house, whether it's for a car, whether it's for any other asset, make sure that those decisions are made from financial logic and not ones of ego. What is the easiest industry to make money in? Let me tell you, the easiest industry to make money in is the one that you know the most about. And really that is a very simple answer to what I think is a very simple question. Normally when people ask this kind of a question, they're asking it from a kind of a position of laziness, because they don't want to put the effort in to learn about something themselves, or they don't want to put the effort in to battle through the hard times in the business or the industry that they're already involved in. And they're asking a question like, oh, you know, I've heard crypto is really good. How do I make money in crypto? Or I've heard property's good, or social media marketing's good, or whatever that flavor of the month business is. There's an expression that everybody's business is better than your own. And that's because that's what business owners feel, you know, because you always think in your own business, you've got so many problems and you say, oh, I hate this business, this is a problem, that's a problem. What he's doing is so easy, I'd love to be in that business. The reality is every business is full of its own problems, its own set of kind of unique intricacies. And until you're in that business, you'll never really appreciate it and you'll never really know what they are. Just like the expression, the grass isn't greener on the other side, it's just the same thing in business. I think if you found a business that you like and that you know something about, the best way to make money is to stick with that business, to stick with that industry, and to learn more, to double down, go with the reasons why you got into it in the first place. If you're not in business at the moment anyway, and you're looking for a business to get into, then maybe it's a slightly different kind of question. But I would always say the best business to get into is the one that you're going to love and that you're going to enjoy. Because to make money in anything, you're going to have to commit many, many hours and weeks and months and years of probably losses and pain before you get the fun times and the profit. And you're only going to sustain that if you're enjoying what you're doing. You know, I could say to you, finance is the best business in the world because that's made me a load of money. But if you don't like it, you're not going to spend the time to learn what you need to learn, and you're not going to get to where you need to be. Very few people make money very quickly in any business. Yes, on Instagram nowadays we see these overnight successes, but none of them are really overnight successes. The years and years and years it goes on behind the scenes and never what's talked about and never what's shown, but that happens in every single business. Nowadays, you know, obviously the advent of the internet, of the fact that it's so easy to access people all over the world, gives the ability to scale very quickly in online businesses, and that's an obvious choice if you need to reach a mass market very quickly, and that's probably a route to profitability and to making money for a lot of people. But again, if online businesses, digital media, if technology isn't your thing, then it's not going to be a successful or profitable route for you. So when you're asking the question of what is the best business to make money in quickly, just decide why you're asking that question. Is it because you're trying to be lazy? And if you are, then just have another look at what you're doing now. Maybe it's time to double down on it and put more effort in, because you did pick that business for a reason in the first place. Maybe you're just having a bad time, suffering bad circumstances, but the fundamentals of why you got involved in the first place potentially haven't changed. Am I buying NFTs at the moment? No, I'm not buying NFTs at the moment. And that's not because it's right or wrong to buy them. The reason I'm not buying them is because I haven't got enough knowledge right now to be able to make the right buying decisions. I talk a little bit about crypto, and for anyone who watches or listens to me regularly will know I've got some Bitcoin, I've got some Ethereum, and I've spent quite a lot of time learning about both of those two coins, and I will be holding them for the long term. I started to look into NFTs, and to be honest, I'm so busy with so many other areas of my life and business that I haven't had chance to be able to kind of get deep enough and get knowledgeable enough. And for me, that's so important. Again, if you listen to much of what I say, I'll always talk about the importance of learning as much as you can and making decisions based from sound logic and knowledge, as opposed to just following the latest fad that you've read about on the internet or in a magazine or heard from the guys down the pub. You may make little bits of quick money in the short term, but I promise you, over time, if you don't know what you're talking about, you are going to lose money, and it's no different to gambling. So I'm not there yet, don't know what I'm talking about. The one thing I would say, just as I guess a piece of general logic or strategy in general, is if I was going to buy any NFT right now, I would be buying a Bored Ape. Now that's not because, again, I particularly know enough to think that these are going to go up, but what I know that a Bored Ape is a status symbol. It's a membership in a special club. And for the way I do business, for the kind of circles that I live in, those status symbols are very, very good door openers. When you're sat down with the right people and you have a Patek Philippe watch, or you drive a Bugatti, or you have a particular piece of property in a particular area, rightly or wrongly, it gives that perception of you, that status symbol, and can open more doors than you may have been able to open without it. And my belief is that a Bored Ape does the same thing, maybe more in the crypto world than in the non-crypto world for now, but I think the knowledge of it is getting further and wider. So I think at some point I will be buying one. Whether or not I'll know enough about NFTs in general then to want to get deeper into NFTs or not, I don't know. I think even without an NFT knowledge, I know that I could probably get some good value from having a Bored Ape. What's the morning routine of a millionaire? Look, I don't like questions about morning routines because I think they're being asked by people who want to try and find a quick fix to a solution as opposed to actually putting in the effort to have that long-term success. I don't believe there is any morning routine for a millionaire. If you go and ask 10 different millionaires what their morning routine is, I guarantee you're going to get 10 different answers. I think this question is asked because, again, on Instagram, on social media, people will see someone like Tony Robbins, jumping in an ice bath at 4 o'clock in the morning, or some other millionaire or multi-millionaire doing something that probably involves something cold, something early, and something that probably hurts your body, and they attribute their success in life to those 1, 2 or 3 things. I think that's a load of bollocks. Everybody's different, everybody's body is different, everybody's mind is different. There's a big focus nowadays about being up super early to get ahead of the game, to kind of get a march on your competitors. And whilst there's a degree of logic to that, I think it nowadays probably comes more from a position of machoism than a position of true logic. I mean, yes, you're going to struggle to be successful if you're rotting around in bed till 11 or 12 o'clock every day, spending the afternoon watching telly and spending the evening getting drunk. But there becomes a point, almost like the point of diminishing returns, of maybe getting up too early is going to hamper your progress. I can't rot in bed all day, and I do need to get up semi-early. I try and get up in the morning at 7:30. But a lot of people say that's super late because they've been up at 4 a.m, 4:30 a.m, 5 a.m, and they've got a 2 or 3 hour march on me. I'm just not a morning person. If I'm getting up at 5 o'clock every morning, come lunchtime, I'm going to be ready for bed again. I do my best work in the afternoon. My particular lifestyle, the way I do business involves a lot of lunches, a lot of dinners, and I'm typically up late. So it's just not feasible for me to be up until midnight, 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock in the morning, and then getting up at 4, 5, 6 o'clock in the morning. I'm going to be dead. I feel pretty tired as it is, getting up at 7:30. And that's just one example. Again, you'll find people who say when you get up in the morning, make sure you don't even look at your telephone. Keep it to one side. Don't go on social media. Don't respond to emails, and cleanse your mind for another hour while you're waking up. Again, some people probably get benefit from that. I personally don't. As soon as I wake up, I like to jump on my phone. And it's not because it's frazzling my head. Work is my interest. So I want to be looking at my WhatsApp messages. I want to be looking at my emails, and I want to be dealing with them while I'm moving around the house. I go to the gym in the morning. Now, I go to the gym in the morning because I prefer to do that than in the afternoon or in the evening. I think it makes me feel fresh and kind of invigorated for the day ahead. But also, one of the main reasons I like to do it in the morning is because if my day goes on and on and on, then I know come the evening, I'm probably going to be too tired. And when I used to do workouts in an evening, I would actually find myself missing them more and more and more frequently because I'd come home after a stressful day at work and I'd put my feet up for half an hour, and half an hour becomes an hour, becomes 2 hours, and the next thing you know, it's too late to go to the gym. Again, as anyone who listens to me or watches me regularly knows, fitness is something I believe in very strongly. It's a massive part of my routine, and I believe that you can't be successful in life or you can't be at your peak performance in business unless you've got your body in some kind of shape as well. So exercise is truly important to me, and therefore it makes sense for me to have it as part of my morning routine. But you've all got your own morning routines. In the same way, some millionaires are going to tell you that smoked salmon and scrambled eggs cooked at 17 degrees for 43 seconds is how they get up in the morning, and that's how they make their money. But again, is that why they make their money? No, it's not. That's just something they do. You'll find someone equally, if not more successful than them, who gouges on chocolate croissants at 11 o'clock. There's no right morning routine for a millionaire. There is only the right morning routine for you. But just apply common sense and logic to it. You don't need to be up at 4 o'clock in the morning, but you also can't rot in bed till 11 or 12 o'clock in the afternoon. Do what makes sense, do what makes you feel good, do what makes you perform at your optimum. If you want to get attention in business, then you need to stand out. And if you want to stand out, then you need to be different. You need to be doing things that are different to what everybody else is doing, especially different to what your competitors are doing. The world is awash with people producing the same kind of content, the same kind of marketing material, and everything just gets lost. So if you want to be different, then you need to find a reason to be different. You need to have your personality shine through. You need to have core values that are different to everybody else. And I think as a general piece of advice to business owners looking to create marketing material, I think it's very important that you have a big hand in this yourself. Far too often when it comes to brand creation, when it comes to marketing ideas, businesses hand them over to marketing agencies and just think, oh, well, they must know what they're talking about because they are a marketing agency. But I find that, more often than not, these marketing agencies are actually probably too scared to do something that is going to stand out because they think that they may get looked on weirdly, or that it's wrong for your business or it's wrong for your brand. Nobody knows your business and nobody knows your brand like you do. And I always say that the key word in personal brand is personal. And when you hand over your own brand to somebody to outsource and they create content for you, whether that's writing LinkedIn thought leadership posts or writing posts for you on Instagram or whatever it may be, you read them and you know that's not truly you. You need to do this yourself. You need to take control of this and let your personality, let your ideas, let your brand values shine through. Now, I'm not talking about being different for the sake of being different or doing something provocative just for the sake of being provocative. If you can be different and provocative for the right reasons, then yeah, I'm absolutely all for it. But make sure it still kind of aligns with the rest of your business. I mean, just as an example of that, I actually recently was talking to a marketing agency who wanted to do some work with me. And one of the first things they said is, we need to change some of your public bits of personality, some of your public content, because we think the image you give across isn't right for a business owner, for a guy working in finance, etc. And what they're talking about is, pictures of my arse on Kilimanjaro or hanging half naked off the back of a boat or something. And I completely disagree with that. Now listen, what I'm saying there is I get that those pictures and those posts aren't for everyone, and that some people will maybe find my posts or my personality inappropriate or offensive or whatever that may be. They may not get me, they may not gel with me. But what's really important to know is that what you see on my social media is what you get if you saw me in real life. So I always say, look, if you don't like me on social media, you're not going to like me in real life. And if you don't like me in real life, we're not going to be doing any business together. So why the fuck do I care anyway? I think you need to take that logic and apply that to your businesses. So don't let anybody else tell you who you should or shouldn't be, because even for the people who look at my posts and think, oh, that's a bit cheeky, or I wouldn't be doing that, believe me, they still remember them. It still stands out more than it would with somebody doing something normal, just another typical post of a person sat there with the laptop going, here's my office for the day again. I mean, how many posts like that have you seen? They just get lost and lost and lost. If you see my arse on LinkedIn, believe me, you're going to remember it, because there aren't many arses on LinkedIn. And that will then jog your memory to want to do some business with me. If you want to get attention, you've got to stand out. If you want to stand out, you've got to be different. What can you be doing that's different, that your competitors aren't doing, that your peers aren't doing, and is going to make people remember you? There's only one thing worse than being talked about, and that's not being talked about at all.